Morning, everybody. We are going to get started right at 11 a.m. I appreciate you taking the time to join with us. We see that there's a few others still looking to sign in, so we will start here very soon. And good morning, and welcome to the Managing Voting in Digital Boardrooms webinar. My name is Tony Hoff. I'm the marketing manager here at Survey and Ballot Systems. I'll also be your moderator and co-host for today's event. A couple of quick housekeeping items. First of all, we are recording today's webinar. So if you are an avid note taker and maybe missed something, don't sweat it. We will certainly send the recording after today's presentation. Also, too, if you had a friend or a colleague who was unable to attend, feel free to share that recording with them once you receive it. Also, we'll be doing a Q&A at the end of today's session, and to submit your questions to us, just simply do that right through the chat area. Again, my name's Tony. I'm the marketing manager here at Survey and Ballot Systems, and just a quick background on myself. I've been at SBS for nearly 10 years, and I've worked on elections and votes of all types in that time, from bylaws and director elections, mergers, proxies, on-site, hybrid, you name it, ties, runoffs. I've basically seen a little bit of everything, or at least consulted on that. And what I can say is, in the voting world, it's always something keeping us on our toes. And joining me here today is my colleague, Kyle. Kyle works in our marketing department as well, and for a number of years has been working on implementing guides and best practices on all things voting. And in the last year and a half or so, Kyle's been focused on working with our development team on our latest product, Direct Vote Live, and has really become our virtual meeting expert. So Kyle, first of all, thank you for being here. And if you could maybe just share some background on why we put today's webinar together.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. It's great to be here. So SBS has 30 years experience with elections and votes of all shapes and sizes. We've really seen technology and voting methods change so much in that time. And now we're kind of in a moment where so many of you on this webinar and around the world have been forced to change the way that you operate on a moment's notice. We developed Direct Vote Live this past year after hearing from clients that they really wanted a way for board or committee members to vote in meetings remotely. Now, obviously, that need to vote remotely has gone through the roof. So today we want to show you that even though things may not feel normal at all for your organization, that there are tools available to make sure that your governance process doesn't need to come to a screeching halt.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. It's really important that governance continues to move and advance. And before we dive into the content, I just want to take a moment to recognize the different organizations, different types of folks who are on this webinar today. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with SBS as others, we run, as Kyle mentioned, voting events for all different types of organizations. And in the last 2 months, it's been humbling to watch how your organizations are supporting frontline staff and really helping the country through this challenging time. And we work with labor unions for nurses, teachers, cooperatives of electrical or food, and financial institutions, and so on. And it's been inspiring to watch the work that your organizations and your members are doing. And so we just want to take that moment to say thank you and share how much we certainly appreciate everything that your organizations are doing. We thought a good place to start with this presentation was to address, how has governance changed in the last 2 months? And to put it simply, it's changed a lot. Since mid-March, we've seen a lot of rapid change take place when it comes to member governance, and it really impacted your org differently depending on where you were in your governance cycle. So if you're thinking in terms of your annual election, it could have impacted your nominations, it could have impacted the actual voting, or your annual meeting itself. And some of the things we saw were a quick pivot to online tools and digital tools, particularly in the nominations side. We saw a lot of organizations either come to us and work with us on a nominations application, or maybe they did it internally and simply just turned a PDF into a fillable PDF or a web form on their website. And the same thing happened in elections and voting. We saw a big push to add online voting or increase reminder emails if they were already doing online voting. Maybe they added single sign-on, and the list goes on and on of the different things that were added in digitally. But we also saw a push on the paper side. More organizations wanted to deliver direct mail ballots to their members, and this was an effort to really out and reach your members wherever they are on whatever platform they prefer. In March and into April, you got to engage your members from a distance during this time. And to sum it up, as I said when we got it, the bottom line is governance has changed. It will likely change for years to come. And we're also talking to a lot of orgs now that are planning their elections and governance process in the fall, and they're working through some of those changes as well. So with that, Kyle, I think maybe the next topic to cover here is when you have rapid change that is coming through your organization. Can you share a little bit about how organizations and leadership should be communicating this to their staff and their memberships?
Yeah, absolutely. As everyone is well aware now, governing during a crisis is something that requires strong leadership. It requires your leaders to do things like encourage transparency, make sure that you have clarity of messaging, and also be taking a proactive approach towards things. What that means is that you need to be providing a clear and consistent message to your members. And that'll typically come from multiple lines of communication. So you really want to be able to reach them in every way that they can be receiving communications, whether that's from the email, from a phone, it could be even text messaging to employees or to a board of directors, and then also a conference call or digital town hall. You just want to be getting in front of members, getting in front of board members as much as you possibly can. So some of the keys to successful communication during times like this, really the use and understanding of technology right now is no longer optional. Remote working was forced on us by the current circumstances, but now it's just a question of how to bridge that technology gap for board and committee members. The current reality is that these members will likely need to learn or know how to use email, learn how to call into a web conference, and they'll likely be using multiple devices like a phone, a laptop, a tablet, etc. And this raises important questions for you to consider, like, are these devices something that are being provided to boards of directors and committee members? And how are you going to have a process of training them on these devices? So just some important things to think about. With that, Tony, I'll throw it back to you on virtual meetings.
You bet. And part of that is the title of this slide kind of makes me laugh a little bit, the new norm. I'm sure we've all heard that plenty the last few weeks and months. But when it comes to virtual meetings, the reality is that this is our new normal, that folks are going to need to meet remotely or digitally for the time being. And a couple of items to point out is that if you're already doing virtual meetings, hopefully these tips will reinforce some of the process that you went through. If you're planning your first virtual meeting, be it a board meeting or a committee meeting, these are some things to consider. And to start off, it's more of a legal question. Are virtual meetings allowed? And what I recommend doing is checking your bylaws or your state statutes for guidelines. And it's important to note that many states and governing bodies have really relaxed the rules relating to remote meetings, virtual meetings, etc. So do a little bit of homework, but know that overwhelmingly there is some flexibility here if you weren't permitted to do so prior. Choosing the right web conference. Kyle mentioned, having folks being able to call in. I'm not going to endorse one or the other, but what I'll say is that they all function basically the same. You've got, your Zooms and GoToMeetings and things like that, but choose the one that makes the most sense for your org. If you're already utilizing one of those platforms and your group is familiar with it, utilize that one. A big thing is just make sure you're preparing your staff and your board members. And in that, maybe it's a week in advance, do a system check, have everyone signing in. If you're passing the controls, just make sure that everyone's ready to go in that capacity so your meeting's efficient. Sending a proper notice for a meeting. If it's your annual meeting, usually it's bylaw driven by certain dates and times, depending on when that meeting takes place. If it's a board meeting or a committee meeting, there's usually some more flexibility there with how and when you can deliver a notice. A lot of our partners do a good job of posting it online. Maybe it's a month in advance or 2 months in advance. But a big thing to consider too is how you're dealing with agenda changes, and maybe even more broadly, how you're dealing with a venue change. A lot of organizations have board of directors that will meet one day a month, and it's typically been in person, and it takes 8 to 10 hours. And it's unlikely that you're going to get a lot of engagement or people to really focus for a full 8 hours on a conference call. So my advice is to really define what you're looking to accomplish. Don't ask for a full day if you don't need it, and level set with your team as far as what the expectations are for that meeting. And lastly, when it comes to a virtual meeting, the all-important aspect of voting. We saw a lot of organizations try a number of different things in the last couple of months to accomplish a vote. And what they were utilizing were some online polls or surveys, and also features like polling within a web conference. And it did leave the door open to a couple of issues. And the most common one was if it's a web conference and that dial-in information is public knowledge, you could potentially have non-members or non-voters having access to it. Usually polling software, there's a lack of official results. And what I mean by that is that it might not clearly define the motion or what you were voting on. And sometimes if that's the case, the reporting mechanisms there, they just don't meet policy. Also too, we saw that organizations were having trouble voting on motions that were brought up during the meeting. Someone made a motion in a second and so on, and there just wasn't a lot of flexibility within these platforms to add a motion on the fly, if you will. And so that's really where Direct Vote Live came in to help alleviate some of those challenges. And Kyle, if you could maybe just share a little bit of the different voting types that we're seeing folks use Direct Vote Live for.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Tony. So, I mean, we're really seeing Direct Vote Live in kind of a variety of uses right now. And that goes from board meetings in smaller groups to larger groups where an on-site election may not be possible now, where they're looking to vote on motions and maybe even vote on candidates in an annual general meeting. The other side of things too with that is that if you have committees or any sort of corporate governance, essentially any scenario where you have groups of people that are now meeting virtually, where voting is necessary, whether that's to pass motions, resolutions, or even to just determine sort of the route of where your organization is going. So some of the basics for a digital meeting, you don't want to mess up the basics. And really you want to go into a meeting fully prepped. What this means is, the basics. You want to make sure that your members are trained, that they sort of have this confidence in using the platform, particularly with ones that aren't as tech savvy. This may mean running test meetings. This is something that we really recommend, where you're running test meetings and test votes, where every single voter has the chance to see these motions opening. They're able to see the results, and they're able to figure out their way of logging into the system and making it work. You also want to make sure that you're sharing the agenda, the minutes, things along those lines, where voters are able to see necessary documents before they're voting. That may be the text of motions, that may be bios, that may be the meeting minutes from the prior meeting that they need to approve. Making those available in a convenient place is really important for voters. And then also sort of general call etiquette. So, making sure that people know if their cameras need to be on, making sure things are muted, and then also having someone appointed that's kind of gathering the input from all their members as sort of a meeting administrator can be something that's really helpful.
Absolutely. And then kind of on that meeting etiquette side, some tips for voting during a virtual meeting. I recommend that you kind of level set with your group as they're going into maybe their first virtual meeting. And there's a couple of quick points to consider. Is one, on a conference call, you want to avoid talking over each other or avoid having one person dominate the conversation. I think we've all been on a call, I would imagine here recently, where someone maybe poses a question and 3 people respond, and there's that 5-minute or 5-second awkward pause where then someone says, go ahead. And when you're talking about a board or a committee meeting where you need those formal processes in place, just remind your team to slow down, say their name for the record, and make sure that everything's properly being recorded. And also to allow as much time as needed for discussion. I've been on committee meetings where the discussion's been a matter of minutes, and others where it's taken much longer than that. So you want to just ensure that everyone has the proper amount of time to get in and say what they need to say, so that you can have that great discussion. And lastly, real-time voting and actionable outcomes. It's again, this is more geared towards what Direct Vote Live is able to do, where you're able to have a motion in a second and be able to have the meeting host quickly add that in to the meeting and push that out live to your board members. It was really designed to think like a meeting and provide that flexibility and that real-time feel that would mirror what you would experience around the table of an actual in-person meeting. And so, Kyle, with that, one of the things we saw is when you're calling into a conference call, sometimes it can be hard to establish quorum in a meeting. Can you share a little bit about what that looks like in Direct Vote Live?
Yeah, so this is a big challenge that we've heard within meetings, and especially meetings where voting is possible, is that many meetings have a combination of voting and non-voting members that are present in scenarios where only the voting members should really be counted towards quorum. And this can provide some challenges where you can't simply just take the number of people that are present on your Zoom call because you have non-voters. That applies for whatever teleconferencing service you use. But this is really an advantage of using a third-party voting system within your meetings, because with something like Direct Vote Live, for example, you're able to see a real-time list of all the eligible voters, as well as a roll call of who is present among those eligible voters and when they logged in. So you can sort of see that on the screenshot now of that list of attendees with timestamps of when they logged in. This really helps remove the guesswork of the who's on the line question. And it saves your administrators from rushing through the math of having to add up the number of eligible voters and names that ensure that you're at quorum to proceed with your meeting. So now that I've mentioned Direct Vote Live a few times, I think now is a good time to cover what exactly that is and what Direct Vote Live can do. So first and foremost, like all of our offerings at Survey and Ballot Systems, security is a top priority. This security is backed by the same security that you would experience with Survey and Ballot Systems elections. And we have SOC 2 compliance and bank level security measures to provide that. All of our data is encrypted. All of the infrastructure has 24/7 monitoring and response, which it basically means that any issues that could arise are responded to and resolved immediately. One of the real values to Direct Vote Live is credentialed voters. While a poll within a teleconference is often open to the public, Direct Vote Live will limit the voting to just the correct members. Not only does this ensure that the right people are voting, but it also guarantees that they're only voting once. Our system includes an automated data upload, which allows administrators to easily add members to a meeting vote and really save time in getting those members into the system, as well as an automated email invite to these members. These emails are custom to each participant with simple login links that will take your user right to the voting page. And if you're a power user that needs to run meetings regularly, Direct Vote Live allows you to duplicate past meetings if you want to keep that same structure and voter list. So what does voting look like? Well, you can see some images here of what voting on motions or ballot items would look like as both an administrator and a voter. There are all sorts of capabilities and scenarios that this platform can be used for. Some of those include things like approving prior meeting minutes. Motions kind of along this line and other what we call procedural votes. These can take a lot of time at the top of any board meeting. So having the ability to approve these all in an efficient way can be a big time saver. Any other known action items to be voted on. You can even pre-add these to your meetings. So if you know them in advance, they're just there to be voted on once the meeting starts and those motions are opened. And then also the ability to add motions on the fly. Tony mentioned this a little bit, and this happens all the time in meetings. It takes a matter of seconds within Direct Vote Live to create a new motion for voting or to edit the text of an upcoming motion. There are also some really helpful administrator controls and tools. It's quick and easy to open and close motions as a meeting progresses. It's the click of a button. Once a motion is opened, voters will see that motion open instantly on their device. I should point out that that device could be anything. Direct Vote Live is optimized to really work on any computer, tablet, or mobile device. So however your voters are accessing the internet, they're able to vote on Direct Vote Live. Not only are voters seeing these motions open in real time, but they can also get access to instant results. So our system includes the customizable option to allow all voters to see an immediate report on the voting results for each motion on the instant that it closes. Admins can also do things like upload meeting documents to be available for download by voters. This could be anything from meeting minutes to the text of motions or even the PowerPoint deck for that meeting. Just things to make it simple for your voters and to keep things all in one place. So with that, Tony, I'll kind of throw things back to you.
You bet. Again, appreciate your insights and sharing some of the tips on what Direct Vote Live can do and help support virtual meetings. And just to kind of button things up as far as from the content standpoint, digital governance is rapidly been thrust upon us, and it's been a big pivot for a lot of organizations to adopt digital methodology that they weren't already doing that. And some were probably very happy that they've been offering digital components for a number of times because they didn't skip a beat. But at the end of the day, the time is now to be adjusting and thinking into the future of how you're going to engage your members throughout your organization with the different types of governance aspects that you have. When it comes to running a meeting, our advice again is to train your staff, train your board, test out your systems and your software, and make sure that you're establishing that meeting etiquette or that official process so that everyone has ample time to discuss and has an equal seat at the table. And again, as we mentioned, Direct Vote Live, it's a great tool for helping with those virtual votes, depending on your group and what they may look like, whether it's a board or a committee, even annual general meetings that are now going virtual, and really giving organizations that tool to be able to establish quorum, run through the roll call, and also get real-time actionable results. So with that, I just want to quickly say thank you again to everyone for participating in today's event. If you're interested in taking a look at Direct Vote Live, we do have 30-day free trials with all of our different plans. You can simply go to surveyandballotsystems.com, and right on the homepage, there's a section dedicated to remote and virtual meetings. Also with that, we mentioned that we were going to take some Q&A at the beginning of it. I know we had a couple of questions run in, and so we'll get started with that. Kyle, if you're ready for a couple of questions, let me know.
Sure. Yeah, we can jump into that. It looks like the first question that we're seeing is, can a voting system like yours handle multiple voting committees? The short answer for something like that is yes. Direct Vote Live is built to accommodate really as many different voting groups as you might need. So whether that is different committees or the board that's voting, we can certainly provide different groups for voting with that also allow for different voting or different administrative access for those admins of the groups.
Thank you, Kyle. I see another one here too. Is more of a pricing question. What does Direct Vote Live cost? We have multiple plans for Direct Vote Live. It starts at a minimum of $49 a month, depending on the plan. Again, it's a subscription service, so you could certainly scale that up or down depending on your needs. But it's certainly been designed to be a flexible and cost-effective tool.
Thanks, Tony. We had a bunch come in here at once, so we'll try to get to as many of these as we can. We'll give the disclaimer here of if we don't get to your answer, we will make sure to get to your answer in person after this, but we just want to be respectful of everyone's time. So just from this, how many votes at one time can this accommodate? For example, 1 or 4 or 10 or 400. So the platform can handle as many motions as needed. We understand that meetings can, run different lengths, and you may be voting on a large number of things. So we don't cap the number of motions that can be voted on or the number of voting options within a motion. The number of voters, we can certainly handle 10 voters or 400 voters. So certainly something that's possible. If you have larger numbers than that, what we would just recommend is you reach out to us, and we can build a plan that'll work for your organization with their voting needs. And kind of a similar question, actually, with the same numbers. We have an annual meeting with up to 400 households. Do we need to have emails for everyone, or can owners just sign in if we give them the login info? Tony, do you want to touch on that one?
Yeah. So the way Direct Vote Live is built is it is a digital tool. It does need right now email addresses for your participants to have access to the platform. We're looking at some future ads and maybe changing the delivery of how invites to a Direct Vote Live meeting are delivered, but as of right now, it would require an email address.
Great, thanks, Tony. Can you populate your motions ahead of time and have them pop up when it's time to vote on that item? Absolutely, yes. So you can really build every part of a meeting in advance. We understand that motions and the text of those can change. So basically up until the point that a motion has been opened, you can edit the text of a motion, but you can certainly pre-populate your entire meeting full of motions that you know will be voted upon, and then just open those for voting when it's time to vote. And we just had a question kind of related to that of, can you amend the motions on the screen? Yes, you can, up until the point of opening voting for those motions. The system just protects against, you don't want an administrator to be changing the text of a motion after people have started voting. So anything up until that point, you can certainly make amendments to the motions or any of the voting options within that motion. Does the application provide for a document portal? And if it does, can it be published to the organization's website? Tony, do you want to get that?
Sure. So you can certainly post documents within Direct Vote Live, be it Word docs, PDFs, PowerPoints, etc. But where those would sit is actually within Direct Vote Live itself. So if that's something that actually needs to be published publicly on your website, it wouldn't have a direct connection from Direct Vote Live to your website. But again, if you're able to host a document or post that on your website, you could certainly post it publicly, but a simple upload of that file into Direct Vote Live would present it there for the members of your board or for your committee who's voting.
Great, and I think we maybe have time for just a couple more so that we're not taking anyone's time outside of this 30 minutes. I'll get a quick one here. Can the members see you typing? I'm assuming that means the administrator if they're making changes to a motion. Not exactly. So the members won't see the changes to any motion text if you're making edits until you push submit to actually have those go live on the voter page. So the administrator has control of when those things are being seen. And then I think the final question that we have time for that just rolled in is, what if there are friendly amendments once they start the discussion of the motion that is open? So this is a really good question. Basically, what we recommend with this is if you know that amendments are going to be coming in for a motion, or if that's even something that's possible within the discussion of a motion, what we recommend is that you don't actually open a motion for voting until it's sort of been decided upon the final text of that motion. So we would recommend that you kind of keep the motion unopened until that amendments discussion has happened. Then you can sort of change that text on the fly, ready to vote.
Perfect. And maybe just one more real quick one here. Just came in about, it says practically speaking, meeting the members would run Zoom alongside the voting web page and switch between each. Is that correct? As of right now, yeah, it would essentially, if you have multiple tabs open and you're utilizing, let's say, Zoom to screen share or to see everybody, you would have that on one tab and then the voting page on a second tab. What we've seen a lot of organizations do is just say, hey, just vote through your smartphone or your mobile device, and have your laptop or your primary screen up to actually participate in that conference call. So generally it can be one device if you're able to do multiple tabs, but again, if it's easy enough to just have your phone or an iPad or something like that manage the voting, that's what we're seeing a lot of organizations go towards.
Yeah, and just a quick note on that too. What's kind of nice about the way that that's set up is it gives Survey and Ballot Systems full control of securing your voters' data. That's not going into Zoom or whatever that may be. And then also it really allows your organization to work alongside whatever teleconferencing service you're comfortable with. So it doesn't need to be Zoom. It can be GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, Skype. It could even just be on a conference call if you needed. So we've really built this to be flexible with what your organization is comfortable with running these teleconference services, so that voters or board members don't necessarily need to learn an entirely new video conference platform as well.
Okay, I saw two more come in. I know we're a little over time. We'll try to get to these quickly here. The first one says, can the system handle ranked choice, instant runoff, or preferential ballots? So Direct Vote Live was really intended for the meeting, like a board meeting, committee meeting, and while an instant runoff could simply be done where if you had candidates, for example, in that virtual meeting and you're just taking, say, the top two, you could quickly copy that over and push that live. But ranked choice and preferential are voting options in our other platforms that we have, but currently aren't sitting within Direct Vote Live. And then this last one that came in here too, Kyle, maybe I'll let you tackle this one. Just says, can you control when the tally of the votes shows?
Yes. So the system is really customizable of when you want voters to be able to see sort of these results. We mentioned that you can make those results instantly available as soon as the motion closes. If that's something that you don't want to have visible and you only want to be able to sort of send your voters the final report, that's certainly something that's capable as well.
All right. Again, thank you everybody for taking the time to join the today's webinar. If we happen to have missed your question, we will certainly follow up after the webinar to make sure that you get the answers to your question. But with that, this will conclude today's presentation. And again, thank you for joining us.